Horizon just from Crusader reaction. This is Saladin and the Third Crusade, Horns of Hattin, Extra History Part 1 by the channel Extra Credits. Yes, I just finished the first Crusade, which was ridiculous but also fascinating because how many different type of phases it went through, with the People's Crusade all the way to taking the Jerusalem, I guess. So this is I don't know which year this is. So let me get this straight. So all this crusade happened because at first Muslims take over Jerusalem, then a crusade happens, Christians take over Jerusalem again, then Muslims take over Jerusalem, and then another crusade happens. Is that how it's going to happen? How many crusades are there in total? This is the third one. Guy de Lucian, king of Jerusalem, Raymond III, count of Tripoli, and the Grand Master of the Knights Templar. Before them they carry the true cross, a piece of wood from the cross Christ died on. Wait a minute, where is it right now? Isn't that a piece of cross in, I guess, Constantinople, Turkey? I don't know, where is it? Right now, it's somewhere in some church, right? Is it in Turkey? I don't think it would be in Turkey, right? So it's still in Jerusalem right now, right? Because I remember watching, which video was it? I don't think it was history video. But I remember, reading that there is, I've seen even the image of it. There is a half piece of the cross, hanging there somewhere. I don't know. So yeah. Secure in an ornate silver box, and they are on a rescue mission to relieve the besieged city of Tiberias. But they are not allies. Until a few days ago, these men were divided over a bitter succession crisis. However, now they're put aside to face threats so great no one kingdom can face it. Yeah, there we go. There's going to be infighting, isn't it? The man who unite the Muslim Middle East against them, Saladin. So yeah, it's going to be fun. Remember, if you like my reaction, don't forget to like and subscribe. So I want to start videos to react to more, I guess. 75% of you are not subscribed who regularly watch my content. So, just click the subscribe button. You'll be supporting my channel as well. Check out the reaction date. There's a link in the description. Check out the Khas playlist. And yeah, let's watch it.
Severus, July 2nd, 1187. The armies of the Crusader states march to war. Leading them are three nobles of the Christian kingdoms of the Middle East, founded during the First Crusade. Guy de Lucian, king of Jerusalem, Raymond III, count of Tripoli, and the Grand Master of the Knights Templar. Before them, they carry the true cross, a piece of wood from the crucifix Christ died on, secured in an ornate silver box. And they're on a rescue mission to relieve the besieged city of Tiberias. But they are not allies. In fact, until a few days ago, these men were divided over a bitter succession crisis. However, now, they've put that aside to face a threat so great, no one kingdom can face it. The man who united the Muslim Middle East against them, Saladin. And they don't know it yet, but they're marching right into a trap. A trap at the horns of Hattin. The man who would unite the Islamic Middle East and battle the Crusader states was born in Tikrit in 1137. His personal name was Yusuf, with the honorific Saladin, meaning the righteous of the faith. A name Westerners would contract to Saladin, which we'll be using for this series for simplicity. But whatever you call him, young Saladin was born into a world politically defined by the Crusades. Now if you
Saladin, that sounds like more of a Muslim name. Yeah, makes sense. So all the English-speaking Christian countries just call him Saladin, I guess.
Watched our series on the First Crusade, you might wonder how that uncoordinated trash fire managed to be so successful. The answer is weakness. By happenstance, the First Crusade managed to strike the Islamic Middle East at a time of fragmentation and infighting, when the Turkish Seljuk Empire was losing control over satellite states.
There you go. At the time, I saw, I said that there is no Ottoman Empire, right? I mean, it must be separate kingdoms here and there. But no, there was Seljuk Empire. Lots of people told me in the comments too. It's Seljuk Empire. But even that, there was an infighting between them.
And breaking into competing provinces that were unable to coordinate a response.
After
all, why let a united Muslim front get in the way of a good crusade? Sorry, had to do it once. In that vacuum, the
they did that a lot, right? I mean, this is the latest video. This is from this year, January 2nd, 2021, this Saladin video. And I guess the first crusade was, 4 or 5 years ago. So that joke is kind of old for them.
Were able to carve out a series of Crusader states, which became new wildcard players in Middle Eastern politics. By the time Saladin became a young adult, there were three main kingdoms: the County of Tripoli, the Principality of Antioch, and the Kingdom of Jerusalem. A fourth had fallen to the Turks, sparking a second crusade that failed to capture Damascus. Saladin's family were Sunni Muslims of Kurdish origin and served as soldiers and politicians under a family allied to the Seljuk Turks. Growing up with a classical Islamic religious education and frequent games of polo to train him as a cavalryman, he would actually receive most of his useful tutelage under his uncle, who trained him as a soldier and commander. Now, we could probably do a whole series on Saladin's early life and battles, but for the sake of brevity, let's just say this. The first 4 decades of Saladin's life found him fighting other Muslims far more than the Crusader state.
Yeah, by the way, first crusade happened in what? I guess 10th, 11th century or something. I don't remember exactly. This must be about same time, I guess, right? 11th, 12th century, something like that. From year 1000 to, I guess, few centuries. That was the golden year for, Islamic states, right? They were, really advancing scientifically, right? Before the Mongols invasion happened, which was, I guess, 3-4 centuries. So for that 3-4 century period, Muslim states were, really advanced, right? They named lots of stars. I guess third of the stars in the sky that had names has Arabic names, right? They had, real equipments that basically made easier to, I guess, navigate through seas and things. I forgot his name. What was the name of that? Yeah, something. So, they were really, technologically advanced at the time. So that is the time where these crusades are happening.
And this is because Saladin and his uncle served under Nur ad-Din, the ruler of the Seljuk Empire's Syrian province. And while Nur ad-Din's leadership was a critical factor in defeating the Second Crusade, he devoted much of his life to consolidating Muslim power in the Middle East, trying to unite the disparate Muslim provinces behind a jihad or holy war, declaring a crusade against the Crusaders. Of course, political, religious, and ethnic divisions stood in the way of unity, but Nur ad-Din believed the only way to defeat the Crusader states and reclaim their territory, especially the holy city of Jerusalem, was to create an allied force among the Muslim states. As part of that effort, Saladin and his uncle took control of Egypt, which had been a Shia kingdom prior. Then when his uncle died, the young Saladin took over as vizier of Egypt, where the charismatic soldier showed great talent for leadership, particularly in attracting talent through generosity, until he was declared sultan by his patron, the Abbasid Caliph in Baghdad. Saladin also began putting his brothers and sons in high-ranking positions, building his family into what would be the Ayyubid dynasty. And when Nur ad-Din died, Saladin took on his mission to unite the powers of Islam against the Crusader states via force when necessary. By 1186, he'd been named the Sultan of both Egypt and Syria, skirmished with the secretive assassins, and
so this is in 12th century. It makes sense. I knew it is going to be closer one. So around this time, like I said, Islamic states were kind of advanced, and one guy uniting forces like that would be a bit harder to defeat. So are Christian states going to be successful in Third Crusade? I don't know, but we'll see. This is really fun because I have no knowledge about any crusade, right? Usually when I will react to some history video, science video, anything, I have some knowledge. But when I have no knowledge of something, it's really fun to react to.
Had become famous for largely fighting other Muslims. He mounted a propaganda campaign, arguing that his conquest was necessary to defeat the infidels. But critics pointed out that when he did battle the Crusaders, he didn't always win. Eventually, though, he finally had sufficient force to confront the Crusader states. And it just so happened to be a good time to attack. Because the most powerful of the Crusader states, the Kingdom of Jerusalem, was in a succession crisis. King Baldwin VI, a teenager with leprosy, had come to the throne in 1174. Unable to have children and expected to die at any time, Baldwin was surrounded by plots throughout his 11-year reign, with Raymond III, Guy de Lusignan, his sister Sibylla, and a freebooting noble named Reynold of Chatillon among the chief plotters. When Baldwin died, followed by Sibylla's son that he'd named as his heir, who also had leprosy by the way, the nobles nearly came to blows. So to keep the crown away from Guy, Sibylla became the compromise candidate. But then upon her coronation, she shocked the court by marrying Guy, thus putting him on the throne. An event so divisive.
So, that was politics in a play, right? She plotted that in the background. Like, okay, if I do this, people will probably kill me as a coup or something. But if I, marry one of the princes that are part of the coup, I guess I solidify things.
Raymond temporarily allied himself with Saladin against the Kingdom of Jerusalem, which just goes to show that politics often played as much a role as religion during these conflicts.
What the
Meanwhile,
fuck?
Reynold of Chatillon, a man who acted more like a pirate than an idealized image of a knight, was provoking Saladin. He began raiding Muslim trade routes on the Red Sea, striking close to Mecca and Medina. But it was his plundering of a pilgrim caravan headed to Mecca in 1186 that made Reynold one of the most hated men in the Muslim Middle East. In retaliation, Saladin sprung his trap. He besieged the fortress of Tiberias, knowing that the Crusaders would be forced to attempt a rescue. And they did. The rivals put their squabbles aside and formed an alliance to crush Saladin, though really, even then they argued. Raymond insisted it was a trap, that Tiberias, which was his fort commanded by his wife, should be sacrificed. But the others called him a coward, so they marched. July 3rd, 1187. Oh, it is so hot. The Crusader forces, weighed down by armor, trudge toward Tiberias. Saladin, they find, has filled the wells along their route, and mounted archers keep ambushing them with volleys of arrows before slipping away.
What is surprising to me is that in the first crusade, all these crusaders came from European countries, right? France, Flanders and everywhere, so France, Germany, things like that. And then they came to Jerusalem and obviously took over that area and stayed there up until this point. It's surprising to see how they basically went from Germany, France, European cold places to basically Middle East, right? Near Egypt, Jerusalem. Now going forward to, I guess attack this Muslim countries and places. And now, it just occurred to me when he saw how hot it is. How did they survive there? And, did it change their physiology in any way? Changing because few centuries, right? Generation after generation, physiology would change because you're in more hot temperature now.
And had been to march to Tiberias in a day. But wounded men are slowing them down, so they decide to stop at a spring for the night. But Saladin got there first. Instead of attacking, however, the exhausted Crusader army stakes camp. Then, Saladin's troops surround the Crusaders, beating drums through the night to keep them awake, yelling that God is great, and lighting grass fires to blanket the encampment in smoke. Meanwhile, Saladin has a supply chain of camels bringing his forces fresh water. And in an extra twist of the knife, they take skins of it up to the Crusader lines and dump it out in front of the exhausted, parched men. The next morning, exhausted and choked by smoke, the Crusaders make a desperate drive toward the springs at the village of Hattin. Again and again, the demoralized Crusaders smash against Saladin's infantry, pierced by an unending rain of arrows. At this point, Raymond, who had not wanted this plan in the first place, gives up and manages to break his forces through and flee to Lake Tiberias where he can withdraw. Saladin lets him go. He wants King Guy. He wants Jerusalem. And with Raymond's forces gone, this fight is unwinnable for the Crusaders. The sun beats down. Knights stumble into the Muslim lines, unarmed, begging to be killed. But Guy makes one last gamble. He withdraws his forces to a ruined Iron-Aged hill fort on a high plain. Two low hills, the horns of Hattin, guard the approach. And when Saladin's army begins to press him, he calls on God and the True Cross for aid and orders a charge. If he can kill Saladin, he reasons, the Muslims will break. The assault takes Saladin off guard. Directing his troops, his son by his side, he suddenly sees the Christians surging toward him in a downhill charge. The desperate attack buckles his infantry line, driving his front ranks back so the combat swirls mere feet from him. But Saladin advances, yelling encouragement to his troops. They throw the Christians back, only for the enemy to rally once more and crash the front line again. The combat nearly reaching Saladin, who by this point realized that he was the objective. But his lines hold, and the Crusaders are sent scrambling back uphill. His son says it's over, but Saladin says it will not be over until the king's opulent tent falls. But as he says this, he sees the canvas topple in the distance. The Sultan dismounts and prostrates himself in prayer. God has given victory. Saladin has just annihilated the military power of the Crusader states, captured the king of Jerusalem, taken their most holy relic, and now the city of Jerusalem lies nearly undefended.
I mean, that makes sense, right? I mean, they made one last, Hail Mary attempt to take down Saladin. It didn't work. They were already exhausted, while Saladin's army is all hydrated and fine, I guess. So, that was the time to strike, and he did strike back and kill them. And there you go, war is over. This shows you, like, if you're going to go in any kind of a crusade or fight against certain enemy, you need to make sure that your resources and supply chain are secure. The place you're going, can you resupply there? If not, then I guess you should find some detours here and there where you can resupply at certain level. Because if your army is not well fed and hydrated, right? They are even, begging for fucking water. You're gonna die just like what happened here. Saladin feels like he knows what he's doing, right? So this is gonna be hard. This is not gonna be same as the first crusade. Right, people, that was Saladin and the Third Crusade, Horns of Hattin, Extra History Part 1 by the channel Extra Credits. If you like my reaction, don't forget to like, subscribe. Check out the reaction, there's a link in the description. Check out the cards for place, check out the cards, and yeah, I'll see you next time.